Hello and welcome to an unexpected special episode of Film Pro Productivity, the podcast that helps film professionals and other creatives to live a more focused, effective and happy life. My name is Carter Ferguson and this is episode 52, Off the Cuff, and my new best year yet. Well, it's just a few days after New Year and I am back with this special episode. It's not that special, I'm just trialling something a little bit new and it's called an off-the-cuff episode. That's an OTC in my notes, and that just basically means that it's unscripted. There's a few things I want to say. I'm not on social media at the moment, and that fast is going well. It's amazing. It is amazing how much you can get achieved when you are not tied to looking at social media or Facebook or Twitter every 3 minutes, and I have achieved. Since just before New Year, I've been working on structuring and planning what I am going to do this year in 2020. And to help me with that, I've been using Jinny Ditzler's book, My Best Year Yet, which is the one that I keep going on and on about. I talked about it in the last show, and I did a special on it, a New Year special on it, episode 16 last year. And it's a really just, in fact, as I've been working on it again, I find it just to be an incredibly powerful system, and it's just filled with wisdom. I hadn't realised, I think, first time when I looked at it, just how powerful it was, and I knew it was good, but I was prepping it to put out as a show, and that show couldn't contain the whole thing, so maybe to some extent I was skimming for the sake of getting the episode done. But as I've reapproached it this year and reread sections of it, it's just blown my mind. But I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on. But I'd just like to thank all of the sponsors, really. This is one of the main reasons I wanted to do this episode, is to thank the sponsors of Season 3. Whether you gave £1 or you bought one of the packages, thank you so much for supporting it. And actually, I'm going to release them to this episode to those guys first, and it'll then go out as just a normal episode, maybe a week or so from now. As I'm recording this, I think the 2nd of January 2020. Okay, so where did all the money go is what I wanted to say to the sponsors. You might be asking this question, and I have kind of flagged up a few things as I went, and I have got a breakdown of where the money went, and I can give it to you now if you've not heard it already. So buffer costs are about £15 a month, and what Buffer allows me to do, it's a website, $15 a month. It allows me to schedule social media posts, so I can put out the same post, effectively the same post. I have to make small alterations on Twitter, one Twitter account, on Instagram, on Facebook, and I've now added LinkedIn to that as well. So it saves me a massive amount of time. I'm a one-man band when I make Film Pro Productivity. I don't have any help, although hopefully that's going to change soon, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But Buffer is an essential part of what I do, because to do all of the promotion, all of the research, all of the recording, all of the interaction with people, it is massively time-consuming. So that's a great one. Also, there's £25 has gone to another website called Unfollower Stats, and that allows me to, and you should check that one out, because has it got a free element? I think you can do a certain amount for free on it, and that allows me to see who's following, who's unfollowing. So I immediately know if somebody's following me, who's just following me to get followers, because what will tend to happen is someone will follow and then they will immediately unfollow, and this just gives me that sort of information. And it's actually quite interesting to see who you think might be following you, but who actually isn't. So it just gives me a little bit of information on the sort of people that are following me in the social media, and the likelihood perhaps of either promoting the show or actually listening to it. £45 went on promotional postcards. I got 1,000 of them done for £45. I think it might have been 50 all in once there was some postage in that. I can't remember, but round about there. And I designed all them myself, and I have been handing them out to people, and they've been sitting around basically the local area. And it's quite handy for me, because I talk to people about the show, but they can't quite imagine it. And the postcards that I've designed have got quotes on them from reviews which say positive things about the show. And I mentioned it, I'm sure, on another episode when I talked about sell the sizzle, not the sausage. So, or the steak, sell the sizzle, not the steak, I think is the quote. Although it can be any sizzling meat product you choose. So money went on them. And I did all the design myself on Canva. Great, another website, brilliant website, canva.com. Check it out. Next, the media host, that went up in price, and that was, I think, £89 once converted from dollars. And that has allowed the show to go onto Spotify, which was one big thing I wanted to do, and it has given me access to some statistics for the show. I'm not great at interpreting them, I've got to be honest, but I can kind of see the numbers that are coming in, and I can see them go up and down. I've just got considerably more information than I did previously, so that's got to be a good thing. The website host, that was another £111, and that, I think that includes the domain name as well, and that it just means that I've got a shop front for the podcast, because the thing is, and I've seen it happen to other podcasters, if I was to push this out and say you can always listen to it on iTunes and just say iTunes is my shop front, for reasons out with my control, I could get booted off that platform. Or if I used Chartable or some other place where you might, I don't know if you can listen to podcasts on Chartable. I just look at it for some, it helps me collate, chartable.com helps me collate information on the podcast. But there basically are other platforms like Podbean where it's actually hosted that I could say is my website. But I choose to have my own independent website because that allows me to have all of the content on it that I want to put out there. And that, I think I had a note about talking about this later on, but that will come down to things like show notes, because iTunes, or I should call it Apple Podcasts, cuts off my show notes. My show notes are almost a complete transcript of the show, and I do that so that deaf people can get the information if they want to. Basically, I want to make it as accessible to as many people as possible. But that's kind of where all the money has went. There is money left over. There's about £150 left over, which is going to go into promotion, basically. Now, I'm not 100% sure where I'm putting it promotion-wise, but one thing that I am going to release at some point this year, it's on my list, it's on my best year yet list of goals for the year, is I want to create a Udemy course. And the Udemy course is not to make me money. What effectively happens with these, and it might not be Udemy incidentally, I might release it on YouTube for free. There's an argument for giving it away for free rather than $9.99 or whatever it would be on Udemy. It might be free on Udemy as well, of course. I haven't quite decided, but the benefit of it is not really any money that would come in through that platform, because I don't think there would be much. There's too much competition, and I wouldn't really be able to promote it as much as I'd like to. But people would find the show through the course. So it sounds like I'm kind of putting my efforts in the wrong place, perhaps, but putting content from the show and talking about the show on a platform which has got a lot of people that learn online, I think is a potentially really good route to get people to come and listen to the show in its podcast format, because I'll be able to promote it throughout it. So that's my kind of thinking behind the Udemy course. And the marketing, by the way, I've been thinking about, and if you're a filmmaker or a creator of any sort, you should really be thinking in these terms as well. I've been using this analogy, which is that a baker bakes a cake and they put all their creativity and their skill into baking that cake. They buy the ingredients and they know how to make it, and they make a brilliant cake, and then they decorate that cake and it looks fantastic and it is a brilliant tasting cake. But the cake for a baker is not the business. The business is selling that cake. It's finding people who want to buy that cake and distribute the cake, maybe buy several of them and distribute it to people in the street that would buy it as well. And that act of selling the cake is a comparison I'm making to making a film, making a piece of theatre, making a piece of art, making a product, making a pair of shoes. It doesn't really matter, but the making of it is different from the marketing of it. And I will be putting a massive amount of effort into, I think, understanding marketing this year. I don't have a huge budget to spend on marketing. In fact, I've got not a lot at all, as you know, 150 quid maximum. Not maybe maximum. I could put more money of my own on top of it, and I do that quite regularly. But I don't have the capital to promote a show. I was, if you were on social networking before the new year, you would have heard me going on about Cats. I was fascinated to find out how much they'd spent on promotion of that film, which I didn't see it myself, I have to admit, but from everything I hear was an atrocious mess. And what I heard through the LA Times was they spent at least as much on marketing, some 90 million, on marketing the film as on the film itself. That was the same as the budget for the film. So, and understanding that our product is one thing and our passion and our interest is involved in the cake analogy is one thing, but what we need to be focusing on, I think, as creative professionals is the selling of our cake, the selling of our product, and understanding that. So marketing is very important to me. I've gone off. I don't know if this makes any sense. I'll have to listen to it back before I release it, but I'm going to be spending a lot of time this year understanding marketing and how to get people genuinely listening to the show, because I see the numbers, they're pretty good. For a solo podcaster, I hear that they're actually getting on to be very good, but for me, I think that I could do better with it. But today, I want to really just talk to you briefly as well about my best year yet. What I've been doing, say, since between Christmas and New Year is when I started it, is starting to do my best year yet strategy. And that asks a number of questions of you within the book. It asks you things like, what have your successes, your achievements been this year? I think that's the first main question that they ask you. And the reason for that, again, I've mentioned it in previous shows, is that there's a thing called the productivity cycle, and part of that cycle is effectively patting yourself on the back. So I think looking back and recognizing your achievements, not cynically though, but actually looking and going, I have achieved these things. You might have only achieved a few small things, but they are your achievements nonetheless, and you should celebrate them. If you don't, you're missing out a very important part of the productivity cycle. So that's the first thing it asks you, and then it asks you your failures, and you list these failures as well. You write them down, you take them seriously. This doesn't take 5 minutes. I've been working on it now probably, I wouldn't say full days, but 4.5, 5 hour sessions just on this one thing. And I think in the book she says 3 hours, and I'm sure you could do something in 3 hours, but you'd think about it and come back to it and probably want to improve it. But I, as I mentioned earlier, have reread the chapter preceding the workshop element of the book, specifically is what I was looking at, and I realised that my goals last year were not quite right. I think I had slightly misunderstood it, and it's actually far more useful, I think, than I don't think I made the best use of the advice last year, either because I missed it and just caught it on the rereading, or because I just didn't understand it in the first place. But within this chapter that precedes the workshop, as I say, it's kind of a summing up of everything, and it focuses you right down, is this really wise statement. She wants you to stop end goal thinking and instead enjoy the process. So rather than constantly reaching for this perhaps unreachable thing, rather than, what is the quote, I can't remember who said it, don't try to be good, just try to be better than you were before. She also wants you to enjoy the process and make the process what drives you on. Like, if you're aiming for this unachievable thing, you've got to constantly drive yourself on. But if you look at working on the process of getting there and just working on a bit at a time and driving yourself a bit at a time, you're going to eventually achieve that larger goal. And she talks about a William Shakespeare quote. He said, "Things won are done. The joy lies in the doing." And I think that captures all of this. So I kind of missed that element when I did it last year. So what I had done is set a number of goals to go, by this date I'm going to achieve this, by this date I'm going to achieve this, by this date I'm going to achieve this. And it kind of worked for me up to a point. But actually, as I've come back to it, I've gone, I think I messed that up. I got it wrong. But what she wants you to do is set these slightly more general year-long goals. I've got a goal this year for the podcast, which is to produce 24 plus more episodes, but without loss of quality. Find a simpler way of doing it, or find a way of doing it which isn't going to cost me as much time as it did last year. I know Season 3 is a great season, but oh my lord, it was tough going. So that's one of my goals, is get there. I've also got a goal about a pension. I've got a goal about friendship. I've got a goal about learning, and I've got various other things. I don't need to go into them here. We all have our own things, but the podcast's very, very complex in how I get to where I'm going. But if my yearly goal is to produce 24, it'll be more. Let's just say 29 new episodes in 2020. That's my yearly goal. I would then take that yearly goal and I would break that down into monthly goals and weekly goals. And although I would do a little bit of planning at the start of the year, and frankly, I've done an insane amount of planning so far at the start of the year, you can't really plan exactly how it's going to go and give dates to things when you've got a kind of busy lifestyle and busy working life like I've got. I mean, seriously, I hate to sound like I'm a self-promoter or whatever, but the amount of Fight Direction work that I got last year was insane. It's to the point where not only am I taking this month off of social networking, I'm taking this month off of work. I'm tired. But anyway, what actually she wants you to do is set this year-long goal, but then each month take half an hour out and look at creating 10 to 15 sub-goals within each month that will help me get a little bit closer to that year goal. And I would write them out. I would take half an hour at the start of each month and I would write them out and say, this is what I want to achieve this month. This will get me incrementally closer to my year goal. And then each week, I would take 15 minutes and look at those goals and see what sub-goals to those sub-goals I could achieve within that 1 week. Maybe in that 1 week as well, I might have a better understanding if I'm working a lot that week. If I'm shooting 6 days in the week, I'm not going to be able to really achieve an awful lot towards the podcast, but I might be able to achieve one or two things. So at these points where you assess it, these monthly points and these weekly points, you look back and celebrate the successes and can appreciate, oh, this is how far I've come. And then you set some plans for the future. And then, of course, you can break that once again down into daily to-do lists. And those to-do lists will help you to hit beats within these goals as well. And so therefore, what you're actually doing is creating this one big goal, but then constantly kind of reassessing where you're at, how well you're doing, and working towards it in smaller increments. And each time you do it, you reassess some of the information that you've gleaned from this self-analysis that you do. What you're doing is asking yourself slightly difficult questions, which you really have to think about. And you're defining roles, and you're defining your values, and you're setting forth not just one major goal for the year, you're setting forth 10 major goals for the year. And you might not think you've got 10 major goals. I didn't think I could come up with more than 6, but I actually ended up coming up with about 12, and I had to just make some choices, and they are not easy goals to go for. So, best year yet. It's going well for me. I'm really getting into it. My plans are well on the way to completion. You really should do the same thing yourself. It is well worth the effort. But enough about that. I also wanted to just talk to you a little bit more about the show, because there's going to be a few changes this year, and this off-the-cuff episode style might be one of them. It wouldn't normally be this long. This is just more convenient for me to do it like this. But there's going to be a possible name change that I mentioned before, and I ran a little bit of a poll on Twitter before I came offline, and I'm not sure how simple it is to do this. I'm going to be looking at it tomorrow specifically, but I'd like to change the name of the show to Film Pro Productivity and Success, because I think success is what we're aiming for. Now, success could mean anything. If you've listened to the Napoleon Hill show, you'll know that the 6 shows that Napoleon Hill, Law of Success and 16 Lessons, you'll know that quite a bit about success. But I think that success and productivity are interlinked. It seems a natural progression for me doing a productivity show to also be talking about success. And I really discovered that while doing the Napoleon Hill series, which utterly blew my mind. And I still go back and listen to some of these episodes, and try to apply some of these things as well. That Udemy course, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, is going to be on the Law of Success in 16 Lessons, and it will be based on those 6 episodes, although it will have video content with it as well. But the reason I'd like to do the name change is I think it feels right to move in that direction, and that success is interlinked with productivity. If you can be productive, if you can be efficient, if you can be effective, you can be successful in anything you set out to do. But besides the off-the-cuff style episodes, this year I'm going to try a few different things. There will be what I would refer to as normal episodes written by myself, but I'm also going to be working with some researchers this year, and I'm going to be paying a few people to help me do some research. And that's basically because I want to make delegation a big part of my year. This is something that I've been working out on in my best year yet strategy, but I want to move forward with the cooperation of others, because I believe that unless I have the cooperation of others, I'm not going to achieve the success that I'm looking for the show specifically, but in other things as well. And although I've had disappointments in the past, and I will be talking about this in a show called Delegate this season coming, although I've been let down by others in the past, I cannot help but notice that unless I have help, I am going to continue struggling and not quite achieving what I want. What specifically happened last season was that I was shooting a lot of fight stuff and recording and researching the show, and I just didn't have time to properly market it. I had to completely rely on a few videos that I did in quiet moments, which there weren't a lot of, and an awful lot of social networking, and it is not an effective way to promote something like this. So I'm going to be working with researchers to help me with the lesson elements to the show. So 4 of the shows in the next season are going to be part written or researched by other people, and those other people are in actual fact screenwriters that I know, I hasten to add, and they're going to be helping me build the show a little bit. So we'll see how that goes. If it doesn't work, I'll drop it. I just want to give it a try, because if it does work, it could save me a lot of time. A lot of the show will still be written by me, and what their research will be then interpreted by me and delivered to you directly as the host, but it won't all be my own thoughts. I'll have a little bit of help along the way. Also, there will be interview shows. I'm going to do, I mentioned it the last episode, an interview with Ian O'Neill from the How They Did It Filmmaking podcast. That's happening in February, and I'll put that out just as a tester so that I can get the equipment going. And I think, is that it? All the shows? I'm going to change the way the show notes work. Like I talked about earlier, iTunes or Apple Podcasts keep cutting off my show notes. So what I'm going to do from now on, and I'll backwards engineer this into the episodes that are already done, is the only place that will have the full transcript of the show will be the official website, filmproproductivity.com. The media host, which goes through something called an RSS feed to iTunes and to all the other podcast apps, that is going to have cut down notes. That will have effectively very short notes, which will have credits for people that have been involved in it, like credits for the music, etc., researchers if they've been involved, and it will have maybe links that I've talked about within the show, and it'll have specific things you might be looking for. And so that'll be a much, much shorter document. And that's that's how I'm going to work it. So shortened version of basic show notes on all your apps, but the official website having a full transcript, because people do occasionally want to go and look at who said the quote and stuff that comes along. And also that pushes people, I suppose, to my website as well, which can't be a bad thing for the promotion of the show. And topics that you can expect in the next season, I have these written down somewhere. Where have I written them? Oh, here they are. So, yes, delegation. I've spoken about that one already. Why we should not seek funding. That's an interesting one, but I have very good reason for talking about it. There's going to be one on addiction. There's going to be one on deep work. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about to-do lists. I'd like to do one, turn your to-do list into a do list. I think it'll be called something like that. And there's a whole load of other topics as well. The guests, I'm not sure who they'll be yet. I've absolutely no idea, to be honest. But they'll come together. I'm sure they will. I'll be putting feelers out pretty soon, and I'll let you know maybe in the first episode of the next season, which isn't till the end of March. But hey-ho. The next episode should be out towards the end of this month. and it's going to be the mailbag episode, the second mailbag episode, where I'll be answering a few more tricky questions from a few more listeners. And I suppose I really want to kind of end here by saying I hope that you are all having a great year so far. It's going to be fantastic. 2020 is going to be an amazing year for all of us. I can guarantee it, especially if you take some of the information that I've been given to you and really, really apply it to your life. Try not to zoom through all of my episodes, by the way, and listen to them one after the other without taking a little bit of time out to write some notes and think about it. There's strategies here that will help you, but too many strategies could cause you some confusion. Don't forget to get specific and look at your successes as well. And the thing about that, celebrating your successes, I did a little post on Twitter, and there was 3 replies to it, and 2 of the replies, sorry if I'm talking about you, but it's important stuff. 2 of the replies were jokes about this. It's actually, you need to take it seriously. We're always a little bit uncomfortable in, not all of us, but in receiving recognition or a pat in the back. I want you to stop that. I want you to accept the pat in the back. I want you to take that further and actually give yourself a pat in the back, because as I talked about earlier in this episode, and I've talked about before, celebrating your wins is essential if you're going to be productive. But let me just end with the words of Mark Twain, who said, "The secret of getting ahead is getting started. The secret to getting started is breaking your complex, overwhelming tasks into small, manageable tasks and starting on the first one." I hope that you'll be able to get started on 2020 and this decade on the right foot, and that you'll be able to do so with some of the advice you've learned here. But for now, take control of your own destiny, keep on shooting, and join me next time on Film Pro Productivity. The music that you can hear right now is Adventures by A. Humitsu. And you can view the show notes, the basic show notes for this episode on the official website, filmproproductivity.com. I won't try and do a full transcript of this. You can also follow my personal account on Twitter and Instagram at fight_director, or follow the show on Twitter at filmproprodpod, or on Facebook at filmproproductivity. Please support the show by subscribing, spreading the word, and leaving an awesome review.